Oh my goodness! Welcome to Winners Wednesday, the first ever online international people that we've had on the program.
Yay!
Oh man, you guys are so awesome, and I follow you like crazy on Facebook, and you're like property gurus, absolutely killing it, and I just had to have you on the channel because I know when you started, I know that I was a big part in helping you guys get started initially, again over Skype. So why don't you guys just introduce yourselves a little bit? Just tell us what you guys are doing, where you're from, what your strategy is.
Okay, so my name is Colleen, and this is my husband Zebb, and we have been investing. We actually took it seriously the time we had the call with you, and we found the video. I think, how long was that?
That was 2015.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 years. Yeah. You were like the first, because I remember when we spoke and you were talking about, are you going to invest in England? Are you going to invest in Canada? And we had quite a long session, and and I'm sure that was almost 5 years ago. So time flies.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And ever since, I mean, we've really decided to focus on investing in real estate as well as focusing on business growth. So we've kind of been doing that and basically setting up our businesses so that they generate cash flow and then take that cash flow and dump it in real estate because we see the value in having the assets. So that's kind of what our focus is.
And one of the things I really wanted to pick your brains on in this call is the differences between investing in Canada and the UK, and kind of why you decided to invest in Canada, what the pros and cons are. I know you even came down to the crash course. I spent a couple of days with me and the team. So just almost trying to figure out, is it similar? Are the strategies the same? Is it a completely different world? I mean, what do you guys think?
It's a bit similar. It's not, all the same. And that's the reason why we came to the crash course, because we wanted to learn from you and understand how to tackle the UK market. So when you look at things like, for example, you talking about the HMOs, for example, we got to learn how to structure an HMO and all that stuff, right? And here in Canada, that HMO is basically kind of like, we call it like room rentals or boarding home or different things. But the things that you had to take out, like for example, we found out like the council's tax, the city council tax or whatever you call it, it's paid by the tenant, right? Whereas here in Canada, it's paid by the landlord. So there was just a bit of things that were different, but at the same time, the whole real estate game is the same. It's just, a bit of difference, but most of the time, everything is the same.
Yeah, sure. So do you kind of feel then like the majority of the strategy is the same, but it's just a case of adapting and sort of applying what can be applied?
Definitely, yep. Yeah, the whole scope is the same, but it's just like little things that needs to be changed. Yeah.
And I would say one thing I found was different was that in the UK, you can't get a HMO house until you've got your own property, correct?
Not exactly, but it helps.
Yes. So that was the biggest change, because in Canada, if you want to invest, you go and invest. Yeah. They don't really focus on, okay, so you've got to get your own home and keep that, and then you could start buying real estate.
Sure.
So we've kind of just gone on and, gone full force in buying investment properties.
That's incredible. Tell me then, guys, tell me over the 5 years, like what have you built your portfolio up to? How much kind of money are you making now in property?
So we became full-time in real estate 4 years ago. That was in 2016. That's when we really went full-time with this. And we basically replaced Colleen's income. Colleen used to work and she used to make almost 6 figures. So we actually made more than 6 figures in 2 years later that we became full-time. And then Colleen actually managed to quit her job. So we managed to get Colleen off her job and then try a new market, which was Edmonton at the time. So, and right now, we are still in the 6 figures, and but now we are also investing in the United States. So, we are building our portfolio like crazy.
And that's one of the funny things here is that you can actually get a mortgage easier with a job. So Zebb and I both started self-employed, and then it was like, okay, we want to get into real estate. Then it's like, well, one of us has to get a job. So in order for us to build our portfolio and be able to get those mortgages, one of us had to have a job. And I was like, okay, well, I'll basically make the most possible so we could carry the most. And then once he got his years under his belt and he was able to show that on his taxes, he can afford to carry more mortgages. That's when I was also able to be like, okay, well, we don't need my job anymore. Now let's switch it up. And he was able to do that.
What would you say to people that say it's okay for you guys because, you know, you're working, you're getting paid six figures, able to save lots, it's fine for you. But then what about me, who's not necessarily earning six figures, who hasn't got any money to start with? What would you say to people like that?
So I would say when we started, we actually came to this, little city with nothing, like with a bag. I came with a bag. My wife came with a bag with no car, nothing. All right. So we started working at McDonald's. For example, I worked at McDonald's and, I did 3-4 jobs to build us up to a certain situation where we could actually have money for a first down payment for a home. Yeah. So I would say that's, when people say things like that, it's an excuse not to actually pursue their dreams because you can do it, right? If you put your mind to it, you can do it. When you make excuses, you never accomplish your goals. Endure more pain than anyone else. Push through tough times. Success comes from those. Success comes through those who push through the pain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you're saying you came from Zimbabwe, right?
Yeah. So we came from Zimbabwe, like 2001.
So you came with just like a couple bags, working at McDonald's, and then what? You saved up enough money from working at McDonald's to buy a house?
So no, McDonald's and 3 other jobs.
Okay, so how did you do that? How did you manage to save that kind of money while working?
I think it was easy math. You realize that there's 24 hours in the day.
Yep.
And if you work those hours out and you break it down, we started with a goal of raising $5,000 each. Simple as that, saying, we're all going to bring in $5,000 each at the end of the month. So that means sharpening whatever skills you have, starting whatever extra side gig you could get, anything that will generate income to get you towards that financial goal.
Yeah.
And then once we did, we then used that money to buy a bigger business that was able to bring in more funds. So it wasn't just, McDonald's, started hustling, doing that. It's just about bringing in more income and knowing that.
How did you bring in more income? So you're working and you're trying to save up as much as you can to then put it into a business. What was your first business?
So our first business was a driving school. So part of our moving process was to move to a place where we were able to get more opportunities. Yeah. And we were able to get more opportunities in a community, a smaller community, that we were able to start business ventures. I graduated in business and my family's business. So that's pretty much comes naturally to me. Yeah. So when Zebb was working at this driving school, my mom was like, hey, why don't you open your own? So our first thing was we don't want to step on toes, and maybe not. But then the opportunity presented itself. We had saved up $10,000 and tried to buy a house. And we got denied because our credit was bad. We also didn't have, enough funds to carry the entire down payment. So we thought, okay, well, let's put this money towards starting a business and start the driving school. Cool. So that started generating enough income for us. That led to our next business. We then started a security business that brought in even more money. So now we had a lot more income that we were able to bring in, and we're able to save up 20% of a down payment.
Okay, got you. And that's when you then bought your first house. So you've basically your first house that you bought came from basically just really hard work, discipline, saving. How did you go from that? Because I think that's when we kind of connected. When I think you were about to buy, or you just bought your first house. How did you go from that to then scaling that? Because I know now, I don't know exactly what your earnings are and stuff, but it's obvious that you live in a very good life. You drive fancy Range Rovers. You're clearly live a good life.
You gotta get the range.
You got it, man. So how did you go from that first house, say 5-6 years ago, to then scaling things up to a much bigger level?
So basically, when we got the first house, this was an eye-opener for us, okay? So we got a bungalow where we could basically suite it up, and we made rooms at the bottom. It was its own unit at the bottom and with three bedrooms, and we tenanted it, okay? And we were living upstairs. So we were living upstairs for free because our tenants were paying all our bills and our mortgage and stuff like that.
Boom.
So that was an eye-opener, like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
So now we had so much cash in our pockets. We had business running. We have, working income as well. And then from there, we just couldn't figure out, like, how can we scale it? How can we bring it, like, to make it into a bigger business?
Yeah.
And at that time, we managed to get into an educational institution, a mentor, basically. We got a mentor in Canada that got us to a point where we learned so many things. And from there, oh man, we just scaled it to a different level. Like we did, in our city, we got a couple of properties. We went out of province, out of state. We came to UK, and then we are in the States right now. So it all stems from getting educated. And that's the reason why we came to UK and we came to your seminar, because we realized that you have to get education for you to scale up.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that if you actually want to treat real estate investing like a business and not a hobby, you've got to actually put the time and effort into building a business, right? If you want to be a doctor, you go to med school, a lawyer, you go to law school. But a lot of people think I could just watch Samuel's YouTube videos here from my couch in Canada and know how to buy a house there. But we quickly realized that if we actually wanted to take this seriously, it started by buying a ticket, flying down, and coming to see you.
Boom. Oh, that's really sweet. And you know what? I'm always humbled by people that fly in. And it's a lot of pressure for me as well, because when people are flying in from Australia and India and America and Canada, it's like, geez, 2 days, I've got to really make it count. And hopefully it was really worthwhile and it was, helpful to you guys.
It was. I find it funny on the chat when people are like, oh, I'm like 2 hours away.
Right.
When are you going to be closer to me? I'm like, I am like on an entire different continent and I flew down for this. If you don't see the value, you're not ready to grow.
So true.
Maybe stick to what you're doing for now.
So true. Thank you guys. I love you so much. So scaling then, what were the key things that you did? What were if you were talking to someone now who had maybe 1 or 2 houses, living rent-free, done really well like you guys did, but they wanted to then grow that on a whole nother level. What are some of the key things that you did, that you implemented from my training or from other people's training that really took you to the next level?
I think the first thing that we learned from you and also, from our other mentor was you have to narrow down your why. Why do you want to do what you want to do, right? So once you have that, then you can grow your business to whatever level you want it to be. So after narrowing down our why, I think at the time we had, we got to about 5 properties. And then from there, we're financially free. But then it was like, okay, do we continue growing or do we just stop here, right? Mm-hmm. And then we basically came down to we want to create a legacy for our kids, We want to be able to create this wealth that can last for 3 generations or more. So from then, we basically scaled to a different level. But some of the skills that we used basically was, how to get mortgages, right? How to get mortgages beyond 6 properties. We networked with a lot of people who had, the same vibes as us, same like-mindedness. And we still continue to learn. We didn't stop learning. We still continue to learn. And all that helped us to bring our business to a different level.
I like what you touched on how and I realized that our why can change, because our initial why was so that I could quit my job. However, we outgrew that why and we needed to find another reason to keep us going. Okay, well, now that I've quit my job, what next? Do we just sit and be like, we're good here? But we had to keep evolving and being like, okay, what's the new reason? Why do we need to keep pushing when we don't feel like it? Because now that we're financially free, we could actually just sit down and do nothing. Mm-hmm. And we did that for a bit. And we're like, okay, well, that was fun. Now let's do something else. Because we find that we're more fulfilled doing a lot of real estate, talking to people, connecting. It really helps us grow.
That's great. So with those 5 properties then that enabled you to quit your job, which is just incredible, what were they? Were they all HMOs? Were they family homes? Were they apartments?
We had 3 HMOs, and then we had 2 single family at the time.
Cool.
And we got something called a pre-construction where you buy into the building. So when a building is looking to get started up, off plan, a developer will give you the best deals because they have to reach a certain quota in order for the bank to finance them. So we were able to negotiate a good deal on that property, get an off plan, and when the building went up, it had gone up in value. So we were able to get extra income from that to invest in our next deal.
That's great.
So one of the strategies that we used, Samuel, is a refinance. Okay,
Yeah.
so we'll get a property that's underutilized, and then we'll add value to it, and then the value will go up, and then we'll refinance. We take that money, we buy another property.
That's great. I mean, it's really funny because a lot of I know in America as well, a lot of the strategies in the UK and then in Canada or America, they're the same, but they're just called different things. Everything's the same, but it's just got different names. And as long as you can just learn the lingo, it's pretty much the same thing. So no, that's awesome. So if you were starting over, would you start out in Canada still, or would you start in America or the UK? What do you think is the best country to invest in?
I would start in wherever I'm located. The one thing I picked up from the UK was the rent-to-rent strategy. This was something that does happen in Canada. We just did not know about it. So coming into the UK and finding out, oh, you could actually rent to rent. There goes the excuse of I do not have enough money to purchase a house.
Yeah.
So that was an eye-opener because at some point you'll run out of time or money.
Yes.
And it got to a point where it's like, okay, do we want to be consistently raising money or waiting for our business to bring in money? And we're like, wait, rent to rent. Why can we not even continue to do that to grow our portfolio?
Yeah. Is that something that have you implemented the rent to rent strategy in Canada?
We started doing it a little bit. We basically rented where we live. So we would rent, and then, me and the kids will travel somewhere else, and Zebb would start renting out rooms. And that's kind of how we started. Because we were gone for months on end. So it's like, okay, well, why don't you try to rent out rooms and let's see how this goes. Yeah. So that's kind of how we started building off it. So like
almost like lifestyle rent-to-rent business, right?
Yes.
That's awesome. So what's next then? I mean, you're financially free. What sort of you said you were branching out into America now as well? Like what's the plan for the next few years?
This year, I mean, we made a New Year's resolution of actually getting some properties in the States in January, and then between March and April, we managed to get 2 properties in Arizona. Cool. And in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're doing short-term rentals there, things like Airbnb, VRBO, and stuff like that. And the properties are doing quite well. And we are going back next month. We're going to Ohio, and it's going to be a game changer. There's a lot of things happening over there, and it's going to be I think this is going to be a large scale. We're going to invest in Ohio large scale because things are really, really looking really good over there.
It's pretty affordable. So the entry point of real estate, I know when you went to the States, I think you picked something like New York, which was like, that's like one of the most expensive places to go to the States. Right?
I know. I didn't pick it. I was sent there, right?
But you definitely went big, and we were inspired by that. We're like, okay, maybe there's more to the States. We could take a look at it a bit more. And for us, it's convenient because it's right next door.
Yes.
So that got us thinking, like, okay, the Canadian market where we are is a bit pricey. But for what we would put as a down payment, we could actually buy a house in the States.
Yeah.
So we started looking at the Ohio market where you could get a property for like $50,000 US. You could put in $20,000 and you could get $110,000 out of it. So you could finance that over $100,000 and get more money out to do the next project.
Buy the next project.
Right. Yeah. So it's the same strategies. So
yes.
The UK, America, Canada, it's the same strategies. Sometimes different names. Sometimes the implementation is slightly different. The rules might be slightly different. What would you say the key things are that differentiate the people that are successful? Because a lot of people watch. I have a very high Canada rate that watch my videos. There's a lot of people from Canada and the States for sure that watch my videos. What's the difference between the people that are successful, that hear the same things, and the people that just don't really do anything and no one's successful?
The difference is the people that are successful are doers. All right. They don't just suck in the information and keep on watching your videos and over again and actually don't go out and do that. Right.
Yes.
And then most people that are successful are able to basically just slow down a little in terms of, like, for example, we rent where we live. Right. We don't, the houses, the properties that we buy, we don't live there. We rent out our properties that we buy, but then where we live, we rent ourselves. Yeah. So some people are not able to do that, right? They want to have their own, living space. They want to actually say, I own my house and all that stuff. But those are like strategies that successful people use. They are willing to wait sometimes for a bigger picture, right? For them to get there. But the most important thing is being a doer.
Yeah.
Do it. Don't wait.
We've got a friend who, everything. Like, he knows more about real estate than we did when we started. However, his knowledge was never applied. So we were able to be like, oh, there's a rent-to-rent strategy. And we're like, okay, tell me more. We're going to do it. And we're going to learn as we go.
Yeah.
Whereas this friend would be like, okay, I want to know from the beginning. Tell me from the start. Rent to rent. Whose house am I renting? Where is it located? What do I do with it? Okay, what happens if my lease doesn't start? So you've got to be ready to dive in and be at times learn on the go, right? And that's part of the process. Learn as you continue to grow, and that's how people are successful. You fall more times than you could count, but that's part of making it.
That's great. I love that. I think it's like learn to drive. You read the theory, and then you got to actually get in the car. And if you can read the theory forever and ever and ever, but until you get in the car, it's never going to happen. And by all means, you can drive in the car with an instructor who can slam the emergency brake on if needed, but you've got to actually get in the car. That's awesome. Okay, so talk to me a little bit then about HMOs in Canada. So specifically, if someone's wanting to rent rooms out in Canada, what are the rules? Is there a lot of red tape? You said it was something that you can do first time rounds. Just give us some top tips around renting out rooms, because I know you've done that so successfully.
That's with seeing that there's value in the home. Sometimes, like the properties that we get, they are underutilized. So when we get in there, we basically put in value. We add rooms. For example, if we get a property that is 4 bedrooms, our magic number is to add it to 7. Okay, because 7, then we make a lot of cash flow there. So we get in there, we get permits from the city, we do sketches and stuff like that, and then we get the builders in and the contractors in. And once, I think it takes about 2 months max to get everything set up. And then from there, we would have already decided who we want to rent to. Is it students? Is it professionals? Or whatever? So we usually stick to professionals. And this has really increased our business from when we started, because we realized that professionals, especially in the city that we live in, they are very responsible people. We don't have to deal with things like parties and all that stuff. So once we decided we wanted to get professionals, we have been doing this for the past 4 years now, and they we've not had these other horror stories that we have had about people doing boarding homes or HMOs and stuff like that because of that strategy that we decided to use.
And it's not like, I find there's not a lot of red tape in Canada because there's 2 strategies. You could get a single family home, which we call a bungalow, where you've got a lower and an upper. And what you do is you create the upper into its own suite, so into its own residence, and then the lower into another. So in total, you could do 7 rooms in those 2, but you also have the option to let it out as individual units.
That's true.
But you can also do a single family home and achieve the same. So there isn't a lot of red tape. However, it's important to do the research, because Canada's so big. They may allow it in one part of Canada, but not in another. And from what we know so far, it's easily achieved because there's a lot of student rentals going around.
Yeah, I guess even in a country, every city has got its own rules. So that's great. What possessed you then to jump on a flight to come to the crash course? Like, that's a big commitment.
You just look so exciting.
So basically, I think it was in 2016 in December. I think it was 2016. No, actually 2017 December. We were just sitting there and we're like, you know what? We need a new goal. And we had been talking to some, people that we mentor that were like, we're afraid to invest elsewhere. They were like, oh my goodness, we cannot invest even out of province and stuff like that, right? So as the doers that we are, we're like, you know what? Let's try something different, And UK, since we have family in UK. We're like, you know what, let's try UK. But then before we try it, we knew the importance of getting educated.
Yeah.
And, you know, we heard about you. We looked you up on, you know, on the internet, and also we watched your videos. So we're like, you know what? It's best for us to actually come to your crash course, because then at that point, we'll have all the information that we need that will help us to get started. So we're like, yeah, there's no way we could go to the UK without getting educated.
Yeah.
So we based our trip based on when you were having your crash course.
Love that. Really cool. I'm so glad to see you succeeding and stuff. We've got family connections as well. Just thought I'd throw that out there as a disclaimer, because I think we bumped into each other at a wedding as well at some point.
Yes, but that was after our first call, I think.
Yeah.
So we initially started talking just like, oh, this guy's doing real estate, let's talk. Yeah. And then, you know, a few years later, we bumped into each other. Like, oh,
small,
there you are.
super small, not blood relatives as people might be able to see, but family connections. So great to be related, even though it might be far distance, and great to be, you know, share company with other successful people. I'm really glad to have been a part of that, and cheering you on all the way. So maybe we'll do a Winners Wednesday part 2 when you're both billionaires in a few years.
Oh yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Final piece of advice for anyone listening that wants to be successful in property.
For me, basically, it would be a doer. You know, if you decide that property is for you and that's what you want to do, then go out there and actually make things happen. And the most important thing is to know your why. Why you want to be into property. Why do you want to get into property? Because property, there's ups and downs. You know, when you are down, that why of yours will help you to what? To be able to go up. So why? Know your why and be a doer.
And mine would be, it's okay to do your research on all these gurus who are teaching real estate, but try not to focus on the negative, because everyone has, you know, a hater who'd be like, well, you know what, I didn't like this about that person. But if you cling on to that reason of this is why I will not obtain knowledge from this person, you are losing out, because that person is still moving along with their life. So if you connect with somebody and they've got valuable information to share, just put everything else on the back burner and focus on what they're saying. It may not be, you know what, I've heard this and that, but also realize that I want to achieve these goals for myself, and this is the person who can get me there, so that is where I'm going to go.
Yeah, that's great. Really, I guess you can learn from anyone, and sometimes people don't even like me. They don't like my, you know, oh, he's arrogant or whatever, but the bottom line is you've got to get what you can from people and then go and implement it. So, no, that's really true. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. You're the first ever International Winners Wednesday, because I didn't think to do it on Skype. I always thought, oh, we'll have to meet up, but actually that's the reason we have online these days. So peace out, God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you continue to smash it in property.
Thanks, Samuel.
Thanks, Samuel. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Bye now.